Somehow it's already week 4 of the NFL. And so I've got 4 players that you can start this week who are going a little under the radar, may be available on waivers, but who I think the matchups mean that they are set to explode and contribute to your fantasy lineups for the week ahead. Let's get into it. Welcome to Fantasy Pancake. Yes, that's right. Welcome back to Fantasy Pancake. We have not been able to record too much recently because I have been on holiday in the Welsh sunshine, but we are back with the sunshine of week 4. And what an incredible week it looks to be. Week 3 was incredibly strange, with players like Juwan Jennings absolutely exploding, and lots of players you didn't expect contributing hugely to your fantasy teams. Lots of stars actually going to be quite disappointing. So week 4, it's not entirely sure what the week's going to look like. We have so many stars that have been underperforming, and we now hit the point in the season where we have to judge for ourselves what reality actually is in front of us. A case for this is a player like Tyreek Hill, compared to another player like Malik Neighbors. Tyreek Hill, you obviously drafted at the top of the first round if you were lucky enough to draft there, or actually potentially unlucky enough to draft there, given that CMC hasn't worked out, Tyreek hasn't worked out, CD Lamb's actually not playing that well, Jamar Chase missed a game. The first round was a little bit up in the air this year. But Malik Neighbors, you'll have taken all the way back towards the end of the second, maybe the beginning of the third. Malik Neighbors is currently the wide receiver 1 on the year. If you were offered the trade of Tyreek Hill without Tua Tagovailoa for potentially the rest of his NFL career, or Malik Neighbors, you would take it right now. You take Malik Neighbors. So we're at the point where we drafted players at a certain value, but we're now having to try and figure out what value they actually are. And that means that there are some players that are going under the radar that you can pick up off waivers and go and start for this week, and they can contribute to your fantasy team. Now, not all of these players are available on waivers, but none of them are stars, and they're definitely players that you should be able to go out and acquire to win your redraft leagues. The first player that I have is Jacksonville Jaguars quarterback Trevor Lawrence. Now, it's been an incredibly disappointing season for Trevor Lawrence. Not what you expected when you draft him around the QB 10 to 12 range, with Trevor Lawrence currently sitting at the QB 28, having only thrown for 2 touchdowns and 588 yards through the first 3 weeks of the season. The Jaguars' offense has looked incredibly disappointing. Brian Thomas Jr. looked great in week 1. Gabe Davis is Gabe Davis. Evan Ingram's been injured. Christian Kirk's been okay. But Trevor Lawrence just hasn't looked like the generational prospect that we thought he could be when he first joined the NFL, when he was drafted first overall a couple of seasons ago. And it seems unlikely now that he's going to hit that elite status, despite the fact he's now been paid. We've just never quite seen him put it all together. But there are definitely flashes with Trevor Lawrence that you can see some of that elite decision-making, some of that mobility, some of that arm talent, and some of that sort of the talent across the board that made you think that he was a generational prospect at college coming out of Clemson. One of the best things you can do when looking for your start-sit decisions is to look at the over-unders. This is Vegas telling you how many points they think are going to be scored each week. Now, the third highest over-under of the week is the Jaguars versus the Houston Texans in an all-AFC South matchup. This is quite an interesting one. Both of these teams should have high-powered offenses with young star quarterbacks, obviously CJ Stroud having played much better than Trevor Lawrence, but both of them have been a little bit disappointing. However, the over-under of this matchup shows you that Vegas thinks there should be a lot of points to be had. This could quite easily be a shootout, with both of the teams lacking on defense and allowing the third and fifth highest fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks. That means that there's a huge opportunity, if this game does become a shootout, for both quarterbacks to actually perform to a reasonably high level. And I know Trevor Lawrence has really disappointed your fantasy lineups this season, but this is a plus matchup for him. I think this is a spot where he can come in and succeed. And if he can't do it here, it's time to start thinking about him in Dynasty. My running back start of the week is someone who was drafted as part of a committee, and we weren't entirely sure which way it was going to pan out, thinking it might be a 50-50 split between him and the other running back on the team. But it's been nothing like that so far. This running back has seen almost all of the opportunity share, looking more like 80-20 or 70-30 between him and the now established backup. The running back that I'm looking at is still, however, only RB20, but he's contributed pretty well to your fantasy teams and certainly not let you down as he was drafted in the RB 30 to 35 stage. The running back that I'm looking at for week 4 is Zack Moss of the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, one of the huge issues with Zack Moss for this season is that the Bengals just haven't been the same team and offense that we thought they were going to be. The Bengals have only led for 17 offensive plays in 2024. That is genuinely insane. This is a high-powered offense with Joe Burrow, with T. Higgins, with Jamar Chase, with 2 talented running backs, and they should be able to do much better than just 17 plays. But they've gone 0-3, which is incredibly disappointing, unless you're one of the many people I know who support another team in the AFC North, in which case it's quite fun. But for the Bengals, this week presents a real opportunity for them. They go into this game as 4.5 point favourites against the Carolina Panthers. Now, the Panthers obviously produced last week, Andy Dalton coming with an absolute whirlwind of a performance, which we're going to touch upon a little later in my wide receiver start of the week. But do you remember at the beginning of the season, where basically the answer was, if you have a running back playing Carolina, you start them? The Carolina Panthers have allowed the 6th most fantasy points to the running back position. That is an absolute slash matchup for a running back who is dominating the backfield on a high-powered offense. And especially going into the week as favourites, there's real opportunity for the Bengals to get ahead early and allow Zack Moss to run with his bruising style to try and see out the rest of the game. I really think that this could be a week that he can contribute to your fantasy teams, even if it's as a low-end RB1, with rushing touchdowns available to him due to the fact that he's the goal line back. And the offense being seen as favourites, there should be an opportunity for him to score some points. If you are enjoying this video, I would please encourage you to like and subscribe. There is so much great content going to come out on this channel across the course of the season. We smashed through 100 subscribers in the last few weeks, but I want to keep going, so I appreciate if you're still here, smash that button down below. My wide receiver under the rated start of the week is someone that feels genuinely insane to suggest. And I hinted at this just a minute ago when I spoke about the fact that the Bengals are playing the Panthers this week. And it feels mad to be suggesting a Panthers wide receiver as a potential star, given the way that they played the first 2 games with Bryce Young. But that all changed when Andy Dalton, and look, as a side note, I can't believe I'm actually saying that all changed when Andy Dalton played. I can't believe that Bryce Young is so dysfunctional that Andy Dalton stepped in and became an absolute superhero. Andy Dalton is the guy that we use as the bar for an average quarterback. How bad is Bryce? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. That all changed when Andy Dalton stepped in and became the first quarterback in 2024 to pass for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. And I know passing has been down across the league, but that is still a fantastic achievement. The Panthers this week play the Bengals, who have one of the worst pass defenses in the NFL. Now, I said before, they're obviously 0-3, and a huge part of that is due to their defense. If you watch them play the Commanders last week, you saw that the offense, didn't punt. They were able to put points on the board, but the defense just couldn't stop Jaden Daniels. And so that's why I think a Panthers wide receiver could be the start of the week. Your initial assumption is that this is going to be Deontay Johnson, and Deontay Johnson is an absolute smash this week. But I want to try and suggest under-the-radar players for you, so that if you've had injuries or you're looking at DFS lineups, you can find someone that other people aren't going to be starting. And so my wide receiver under-the-radar start of the week is Xavier Legette. So why am I suggesting the current wide receiver 82 as a potential underrated start? Well, it all comes down to Adam Thielen's injury combined with Andy Dalton's ascension to the starter. When Adam Thielen tore his hamstring in the last matchup against the Raiders, Xavier Legette was the clear replacement. Now, this worked out quite strangely because in three wide receiver sets before this, Jonathan Mingo had been stepping in. But in 2 wide receiver sets, when Thielen came out, Xavier Legette was the clear replacement, being played more as that kind of classic X receiver due to his size, speed, and frame. Xavier Legette in the second half versus the Raiders was the Panthers wide receiver who saw the most snaps. And that's not the most snaps aside from Diontae Johnson, who scored 2 touchdowns. That's just the most snaps. So it seems clear that Xavier Legette is the one who's going to step in for Adam Thielen. And there should be volume aplenty in this game. As I've mentioned previously, the Bengals offense is one I want to target this week. And the Panthers offense is as well, because both of these defenses aren't great. So I think there should be a lot of points in this matchup. And Diontae Johnson can't see 20 targets a game, as much as I think Dave Canales is probably okay with that, having previously said the first read on every single play is Diontae Johnson, although it's, there's not a huge amount else on the offense. But Xavier Legette, with that snap share, with the talent that saw him go at the end of the first round, could have a chance to absolutely smash this week. And I'm going to be throwing him into basically every DFS lineup that I've got. So if next week I'm posting from a really fancy podcast studio, you'll know that I took down the Millie, and it'll all be because of Xavier Legette. But it's unlikely. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. When it came to trying to find a tight end to start this week, and someone a little under the radar, I found this incredibly difficult. And this is because tight end scoring is down across the board. The tight end 1 is currently Dallas Goedert, and that's all just because of one game he had last week. Then you've got Brock Bowers, Trey McBride's been all right, but basically everyone's disappointed so far. So it's quite difficult to find a tight end that I'm confident is going to smash for week 4, because basically all that means is you need to find someone that sees a significant amount of target volume and has a chance of scoring a touchdown. The tight end that I'm looking at the minute as my start of the week is currently tight end 15, which sounds alright, but that's averaging 6 points a game, which if a wide receiver averaged you 6 points a game, you would have dropped them. The guy that I'm currently looking at is less because of his ability, although he did see a good target share last week, and more just the matchup that's in front of him. The guy that I'm currently looking at is Tyler Conklin of the New York Jets. Now, the Jets play the Broncos this week, and the Broncos are perfectly average against the tight end. They currently rank 20th in terms of points against, averaging 10 points per game to the tight end position, which is about, middle of the mark. That's fine. The main thing here is that the Broncos currently have been the best team against wide receivers in terms of fantasy points conceded. And the Jets don't have a huge amount at receiver aside from Garrett Wilson. You can pretty much assume that Garrett Wilson is going to line up against Pat Surtain, and that should potentially take him out of the game, which means Aaron Rodgers is going to have to find other ways to beat this team. Obviously, there's Bryce Hall, there's Alan Lazard. I don't feel great about suggesting that Alan Lazard is going to make a huge difference, but last week, Tyler Conklin broke out for 93 yards and finished second in targets on the team behind Garrett Wilson. So there's a real chance that he could have the ability to be the tight end that you want this week. But when I say tight end that you want this week, all you really need is a touchdown, and they're completely fine for your roster. So those are my 4 starts of the week who are under the radar, and you can go and get to be able to smash in week 4. Trevor Lawrence, Zack Moss, Xavier Legette, and Tyler Conklin. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Please consider liking and subscribing. I've successfully managed to get through this video with our new cat under the table. She's having a lovely time. Her name is Agatha Christie, and she's not actually managed to jump up on the table to interrupt the recording. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Maybe this video would have got more views if we had a beautiful tortoiseshell cat on display for everyone. But thank you so much for watching anyway, even though it was just little old me, and I will see you next time.